Hello and welcome back to the second video in this series of Season 5, LOTR Rise to War, playing as Mr. Cuddles. As you can see, we're a couple hours further down the line, so there's a little bit more built. We can now get Tier 2 troops, which we won't be building at the moment, and I'll explain a little bit more into why I don't do that a little bit later in the video. I'm still trying to pick up as much contribution from the Fellowship as I can. I'll again cover that a little bit later on in this video. And there are the shield bearers, by the way. I will be upgrading the shield a little bit, but I won't be using them for a little while. So we've moved on to 40 tiles at this point, which is probably about par, I would say, for a couple hours in. We're up to 18 of 41 tiles, and we're still taking tiles with Dwalin and Gandalf. Maybe a little bit later on, we'll probably come on to taking a couple of tiles with Gimli before I realise the losses are just probably too much, really, to do that with him. So Dwalin will continue to take 30s, Gandalf 40s, because Gandalf is the master of tile taking and doesn't really lose a great deal of troops at all, ever. Whereas Dwalin will lose a few more, so it's just a case of slowly leveling him a little bit more than Gandalf. And I'm pretty sure you'll find that with your own commanders, no matter who you use, you'll find one takes tiles better than the other, so always make sure your higher level one is the one that takes the tiles slightly better, and just take your time with the other. Just having a quick look then at the Fellowship power rankings, we're nowhere near at this point, and I would expect that because we didn't quite start on time. So EZ is actually top. He's still top now, probably 7 or 8 days later. Really good guy and seems to take tiles very well and has some good comms and loves a dwarf. As for the ring, we're up to level 6. We're putting points into the focus part of it in Abundant Wisdom just to help Gandalf take a little bit more. We can't really do anything else at the moment because it's not up to ring level 10. So we just continue to take tiles. As you see there, Denethor was giving us that tile very slowly, as you'd expect from him. The master of defence, or that no one uses. And we just keep on the move, so we keep pathing to tiles with our pathing comms, not our main comms, obviously, like we spoke about before. And keep our production power going up as much as we can. It doesn't really matter what type of tile you take at this point, whether it be stone or grain or whatever it might be. For me, you just get as many high power tiles that you can as quick as possible and just get that power up. You can always use the market if needs be, but generally you can get away with the resources, and stone's probably the most important early season anyway. And we're just making sure we switch the troops around, so we've got one full army. If you're lucky enough to have 2 full armies at this point, you're doing very well. You've probably got great gear. But generally you should have over an army just about, I would think, at this stage, because you tend to lose less than a unit while you're still making units in the background. While that's going on, I just wanted to talk about a couple of the offers that come up early season in particular, and one that I think is always good value for everyone, let alone anyone else. So if you are a bit of a spender, I do think double gems are a good deal. You can get a lot of Mavens with them. It can be helpful for you if you want to whale out a little bit. It's also helpful for speeding up your buildings and everything else in your apothecary late season if you've got the gems to do it and you need it, if you haven't been hitting enough mobs and bosses. As for periodic benefits, I think they are good. Medals of Bound's a very good deal. I mean, 10 Mavens for 179, I don't think you'll get anything better all season. Commander Trials is good, and the resource bonus is good as well, if you want to get ahead a little bit, if you've got that offer available. As for some of the others, I'm not a massive fan of Return of the King. I don't think it represents massive value. It's a little bit better than just single gems, but I don't think it's incredible. And A Long Journey, I feel the same about, really. I don't really think they're incredible value for money at all. Whereas the season pass for me is probably the best value that you'll get all season, barring Medals Abound. I think there isn't many people I know that play without it. I think it gives you good challenges to get through the week, to give you something to do. And also the gold item that you get guaranteed. I know it's only 1 gold item, but if it's something that you want, like in this case a box of knowledge, and if you get it with warrior on it, it can be really helpful. So at least you know what you're building towards. As long as you fill out the challenges, I think it's a great deal. So just moving on a little bit then, I'm just going to explain why I don't think the construction queue is actually necessary or needed at all, really, or a good deal at this stage in your season in particular. So building 2 buildings at once is probably about right. You don't bottleneck your resources. As you see, Gandalf's level 11 as he beat that nasty Grimmer there with his nasty blue gear. And I'm stuck on chapter 10 at this point, so this is my Gandalf build at the moment. Like I say, heavily in the grey, a little bit in wizard and I'll go into Mithrandir next just a little bit. So chapter 10 I can't complete because I'm not level 13. Don't even really feel at this point I can afford tier 2 troops, even though they last longer, yes, but at this point cheap troops is great because you get a lot of them back anyway and you're still taking the tiles. So for me, I don't really feel like I need to waste a resource at this point on tier 2 troops. It might be the wrong way to go, but it's always the way I go. I kind of get a feel for when I need to switch to tier 2 troops. It's normally around the 60 tiles, something like that, just so the losses do stay reasonable. But I will run tier 2 and tier 1 troops alongside each other for a long period of time. I just feel this allows me a little bit of flexibility and just to keep an army full rather than having to wait for troops. Also see there that I'm not shy of speeding up my apothecary with the buffs that the game gives you. Ultimately it gives you them for a reason. I just try and use them as and when I need them, but you know, in the first 24 hours they are at maximum use, so I would advise to use them whenever you need to. You may not need to use them very often if you're lucky. If you're more free to play, you'll have to use them more than you don't, but you know, it's kind of getting that feel for that sort of routine. Just having a quick look around there, you can see how empty Erebor actually was. There was no tiles for me to bounce off at this stage because, well, there was just no one around me. And that brings us quite nicely onto third comm. So in this account, I chose Gimli, and he's a little bit of a paffer, but I'm also trying to level him up. As you'll see, the results with Gimli aren't great early on. He does lose a lot of troops, and it's just because he's not a healing comm. So if I could go back and do it again, I probably wouldn't choose Gimli for the simple reason that leveling him up would be a lot easier once I get the holy grail that is a 200 tile. Don't know how well known this fact is, but I believe from an XP point of view, level 44 is about halfway to level 50. So you can quite easily catch up the levels anyway once you've got the 200 tile. It's just making sure that you get there fast enough to make it worthwhile and get your early season going to a good head start. See in a second, there's a few reports for the next minute or so of this video that on face value don't look very good. They are just about getting Gandalf leveled up as fast as possible to complete the chapter unlock, which we still haven't done because no commanders at level 13, and those units will recover in the apothecary mainly. So again, it's just about being brave, same as it was in the first video. First 24 hours is all about bravery and just making sure you take the highest power tiles that you can while not completely decimating your troops. On face value, a couple of the reports you're about to see don't look very good, but it's the units lost in dead that isn't really an issue because the rest will recover in the apothecary. And I'm going to try and talk about how important your fellowship is at this point, because I feel that it's something that people do gloss over a little bit. So picking up your contribution early on can be so important for getting you the little buffs, because as soon as your fellowship reaches rank 10, you open up the fellowship store, which can have all sorts of little buffs. It can obviously have mavens in and things like that as well, but you know, that increased 30 minutes of grain or a relocation token, even picking it up early is quite good to have. All these things are really helpful, so the more contribution you have, the further you can actually get ahead. As you can see there's a 30-minute buff for wood and ore, and an extra couple of bits for increasing tips, and also for an increased gather. All these are really useful in the first 24 hours, so just getting as much contribution as you can allows you to pick up as many of those as possible. There's a couple of 3-hour buffs as well for resources, which again are really handy earlier on, and if you were going to buy them out of the sort of daily buy store, it would cost you 50 gems each, so the more active you can be on your contribution, the better for yourself, and it makes you look good within your fellowship because you actually look like you're helping people a lot. So what I'm going to do now, same as the last video really, is just throw it into fast forward, really fast forward for a few minutes, just so you can see a little bit of the gameplay and how I go about that, and some more reports where I've lost quite a fefew troops, but again, it's just to show you that you can lose those troops, it's not the end of the world. And then we'll maybe do a little summary at the end while I drink a bit of coffee, and yeah, we'll sort of go on to video 3 after that, which should involve some scouting, I hope. coming towards the end of the video now, and we're still taking 40s. I don't know if you noticed or not, there's been a couple of timestamps in this. So we're down to about 17-ish hours now, probably 16 and a half hours, something like that, left in the first 24. So we're up to 34 tiles out of 41 that we've currently got. And we're stuck on chapter 10 for reasons I've discussed, which is why I don't get the construction queue or anything like that. So hopefully by the time we start the next video, I will have moved past chapter 10 so we can keep going through the chapter unlocks and move forward into some scouting and looking at some other good bits. So a brief look into where we were in the power rankings in both Fellowship and in the overall ranking. So as you can see, we've moved up now using this method, and we are now up to 184, which doesn't seem that impressive, but it does keep climbing because we went in the rankings before. So the method does help you climb. So until next time, if in doubt, always follow your nose.